Yo, what is going on today, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. We are that much closer to the patch dropping, and we're getting a look at the aspects. We've seen a little bit about how people are playing around with them, how good they are, how not good they are. So I wanted to sit here and tier list them, talk about them, why I think that they're good, and why I think they're unique and they're cool for the character. So this tier list is going to be based on how overall strong it is. So stronger ones will be towards the top, but also unique. Like if it doesn't really do much, but it's very strong, it's not going to be S tier. S tier is how fun it's going to be to play and how strong is it going to be. The bottom lowish area is going to be, is it pretty boring and is it bad? Because that's like a bad combination. I think aspects should be used to make a character unique, and then it should also make the character not necessarily stronger, but it should be strong comparatively to the baseline that the character has. Like if the baseline character is a strong character, the aspect also has to be strong. A weak character with a weak aspect is just going to be something boring and not something you'd want to use. So without further ado, aspects tier list, strength and uniqueness. Also, aspects are something that you use as you're loading into the game or before you load into the game. And you don't have to choose an aspect. If you don't want to use an aspect, you can still just use base characters. This is just another way to play a lot of these characters. You're not forced into an aspect. You can choose it, or you can just choose your base character. It's a very, very cool take. It allows more depth to the game, and I think it's 100% a 10 out of 10 idea by Hi-Rez. And so far, it's a 10 out of 10 implementation. I think it's very cool. But yeah, let's get to the tier list. Starting with Onshe, the aspect of Pride. Enfeeble, his passive no longer debuffs enemies, but dealing damage to the same enemy god with basic attacks provides you up to 100% bonus attack speed. So all it really does is it gives him attack speed if he consistently hits the same character. Now, one, Onshe's a pretty bad character, so he's not going to be in the AS tier. And I think it's a pretty boring passive change. I think his passive is pretty cool. I think the change to it is interesting, but overall I think this is one of the more boring aspects, and I think it's going to be pretty weak. It'll be really strong in duel, so if you're a duel player, this might be an S tier aspect. In baseline smite where you're autoing multiple different people, it's not great. Athena, the aspect of war. Defender of Olympus now targets visible enemy gods instead of allies, dealing no landing damage, but causing the enemy to take increased damage while Athena is channeling. I actually think this is going to be a really good one, and I think it's very unique. Is it going to be broken? I don't think so, but I think it'll be good enough that it's exciting and people will want to play around with it and they'll want to play it. It's a different take on Athena. And I also think Athena's support currently is just I think her jungling with this, or even solo, I guess, with this will be really cool. And I think it'll be really strong. So I think it's an S tier for Athena's aspect. Bacchus, the aspect of revelry. After using Chug, your in-hand attacks cleave and deal bonus damage, scaling with strength instead of protections for a short duration. The more I've thought about this one, the more I think it's going to be fine. I think it's an interesting concept, switching Bacchus from scaling with protections and scaling with strength instead. Do I think it's going to be that strong? Probably not, but I do think it's an interesting take, and it shifts Bacchus's style enough that I think I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't think it's weak by any means. It's just, I mean, it doesn't really do a ton to the character. It just switches him a tiny bit. Bacchus's strength comes from building just for like full tank and being very hard to deal with, and he does a lot of damage and a lot of CC. When you play him in solo, I mean, you have to build a lot more strength to get the true value from your passive with this strength, so it just makes you easier to kill. Blona, aspect of vindication. Bludgeon no longer deals bonus final slam damage, but whenever you gain block stacks with sword and shield or gain healing from Scourge, nearby allied gods also gain those benefits. I think this one's interesting. I think the issue with this is I don't think it's a very good support aspect. I think it is a solo aspect that just provides utility and decreases your damage a little bit. But I think it makes her 2v2 scary, and it makes her dive scary. The issue, I think, is most of the time you're not going to have anybody that close to you to be getting those stacks with you. And it's very hard to eat a lot of damage to actually get stacks off. So I think trading out the damage from Bludgeon for a little bit of team utility is never going to be very good. I think it is unique, though, so I'm not going to put it into C tier, but I do think this is a pretty weak one. Cernanos, your basic attacks no longer fire projectiles, but deal increased damage, cleave, and apply shifter of seasons effects to all enemies hit. In addition, horn charges cooldown is reduced when hitting an enemy god. This is supposed to be a jungle bruiser. I'll be honest, if I was rating this off of jungling, I think it's probably one of the worst aspects currently. However, I think it is pretty interesting bruiser CERN build. I think this is more so its uniqueness than its strength. I think it's pretty average. It's going to be fun to play, I think, and it's going to switch the character, and he's going to be really unique and interesting. but I don't think it's going to be very strong. But I am putting it in A tier just because of how different it makes this character feel. And there's really nothing like the aspect of CERN. So I think this is really, really cool. Shock, the aspect of fulmination. Rain Dance no longer heals but damages enemies in the area instead. I kind of hate this one. This one might be my least favorite aspect because, one, it opens up a playstyle where Shock can just toss out his 1-3 and then just clears the wave without it being able to fight him in even. And that's boring. Or it does so much damage or just so little damage that there's no reason to ever take it over your heal. Maybe they can find a middle ground, but I think it's just pretty boring and I don't think it is exciting, and it's not something that I'm like wanting to play really. So yeah, we'll put this in C tier. Cupid, aspect of love. Heart bombs damage is decreased, but the enemy hit has reduced attack speed, and the explosion area heals allies. At 8 stacks of Bloodstruck, allies also gain a health shield. So when I've talked about this one before, I actually think it's really cool as a peel aspect, and he's already a very good peeling character. So, you know, the enemy team is diving your ADC, you won the enemy, you toss your 2 down, you drop your ultimate, and that's just 3 different procs of heals onto your ally while also doing like a decent amount of damage to the enemy. I think it's cool enough to be A tier and interesting enough to be A tier, and I think it's also going to be decently strong. So it's like higher A than CERN. And it makes me want to try the Cupid build and just see what I can do with it, like with an arrows bow also. I'm just kind of mess around with a bunch of things. Danzaburo, aspect of fellowship. Alluring spirits no longer throws out a sake bottle, but instead spawns 2 clones. All of your clones deal more damage and take less damage. This one was weird because a lot of people kind of didn't like it from the ambassador side of things. Like they didn't understand why you'd ever take this over losing your CC on your sake bottle. I think it's pretty interesting, and I think it switches up the character from being utility and having like CC and a little bit more peel to just doing a boatload of damage. The amount of damage that your minions do and your clones do now is insanely good. And it's like a good trade-off where I think it kind of makes him like a hyper carry character. It's already really hard to dive him when he drops his 3, but now he's gonna also have his 2 down to block autos and stuff like that. I think people are underestimating a little bit. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I might be biased, but I'm a big fan of Danzaburo's aspect. Fenri, aspect of loyalty. This one's awesome. Brutalize deals less damage, but applies a stacking slow. Seething Howl's buff effects are decreased, but applies to all allies in an area around him. So cool. This is kind of what you want to see to make Fenrir a support. Now you can, you know, max 2, max 1, max 3, or max 1, 2, 3. It just makes it more interesting to play this character because he kind of became just a 3 max character and just played like an assassin hybrid character who just tried to bully you out. That was pretty boring. Now having, you know, protection scaling on your 1, your ult, power and lifesteal to allies, and then also a slow, I can just make him such a cool character, and it makes me want to play him in support. Geb, and yes, this was before Geb was announced as a character. Aspect of Calamity. Shockwave no longer knocks up enemies, but deals full damage in a circle around you. Additionally, the cooldown is decreased for every enemy it hits. I get the idea with this one. I just think it is not going to be very good, and I don't think it switches the character enough to make it interesting. Yeah, I mean, it knocks up all around you. Cool, and it does full damage, cool. But losing out on the CC, like when you built Geb as a bruiser, as a full damage character, he doesn't lose out on damage very much. Like his ult 2 rollout combo does so much damage. You don't really need that much more. The one thing is, I guess, in a team fight where you want to hit the entire enemy team, like blinking, 2ing the entire enemy team is going to do a lot more damage. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be that good. And losing out on the CC, I think, is worse than gaining a little bit of damage. Hecy, aspect of rune, support utility. Spellity can no longer be refired, but instead reduces enemy ability damage in the area. Additionally, each time an enemy ability is cast, a projectile lands and explodes at their location. This one's awesome. This one's awesome, and I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really good. Because even as a mid laner, reducing enemy damage in the area and like having a little bit of damage drop down is good. Yes, you're not going to do as much damage because your 2's burst isn't going to be there, but decreasing your damage just a tiny bit for this massive utility that you're going to get is so cool. I'm so down for it. I think it's going to be good, and I think it's very unique. Hercules, aspect of preservation. Mitigate wounds no longer heals based on damage taken or provides attack speed. Instead, you gain a stack when you or nearby allied gods take damage from basic attacks. And when the ability ends, stacks are expended to heal nearby allied gods. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one kind of at all. Losing out on damage is never great. And yes, it becomes a little bit better utility-wise, but yeah, I think it's just so weak, and the numbers would have to be so bloated for it to ever be very good that I just think it's just not it. Keipi, aspect of laceration. Abduct no longer pulls enemy gods, but roots them in place with you, dealing constant basic attack damage for the duration. So I had a theory about this one, and I'm still not completely sure about it, but I think there is a world where this Keipi aspect is just bot on Keipi even in support because it allows him to win laning phase. Your damage on your 1 is pretty low, and like the CC is nice, but trading out extra damage in laning phase to actually have you threaten lane makes a lot more sense than just that little bit of extra CC on the pull. Like you're already rooting them, like they're getting CC'd. They're just not getting CC'd as much. I think there's a very real opportunity for that to happen. And I also think it's very cool for a Keipi solo or Keipi jungle to just dash you and one-shot you. So I'm a fan of this. I think it's cool, and I think it's going to be pretty strong. Loki, aspect of concealment. Vanish no longer debuffs enemies you hit, but instead stealths you and the nearest allied god on use. The toxicity and volatility of this is so cool to me. I like it a whole bunch. Do I think it's going to be that strong? I don't think so, but I think it's interesting enough that I want to like mess around with it and try stuff with it and see what I can do with it. Because imagine you're playing Loki solo and you have a jungle Susana with you and you invis and you and the Susano both just sprint at the enemy backline. I think it is very cool. My issue is I think Loki support at least is probably one of the worst laning phase characters in the game. So you're going to lose lane, and that does not sound fun. So I think he actually might be better in solo lane, but we will see. And I think this will be fun to play in solo lane. I'm worried about how strong it's going to be more so than how unique it is, because I think it's very cool. Mordred, aspect of rage. A little bit of a mess up here. Shoulder charge no longer knocks up enemy gods and deals reduced damage, but now passes through enemy gods. Additionally, damaging an enemy god with an ability resets the cooldown of shoulder charge. It resets the cooldown of shoulder charge. This is on Twitter, so excuse the bad quality, but
oh my god. He's a 5-man missile. He's a 5-man missile. Oh my, nah. Somebody, Xbox. No, my god. There's no way. No. Xbox highlight.
That was solo or troll. That's going into S tier. It is very strong, very broken, very cool. I have no bad things to say about it. Probably is too strong. It's going to need a nerf. It probably shouldn't proc item effects for like glad shields and phoenix shields, but what matters is that they're cool, interesting, unique. You want to try them, and that's 100% what that Mordred aspect does. Neath, aspect of wind. Broken weave explosions no longer root enemies, and the buff has a reduced duration. However, the attack speed gained is much higher. Additionally, using World Weaver provides stacks of broken weave. I was worried that this one was going to be really bad, but I think it's a nice little shift to make Neath a little bit more viable as an ADC. I'm going to put it in B tier because I think it's not like the most unique thing. Like she loses her CC, but she gets attack speed is kind of whatever. But I think it's an interesting change on Neath as a usually more utility-based, CC-based character to make her a little bit more of a hyper carry. So I think it's interesting enough to put it in B tier. Nemesis, aspect of justice. Divine Judgment no longer does current HP damage in an area, but instead averages the max HP with the single target hit as long as you have less than the target. This one is very interesting to me. I think it could be very strong also. I'm going to put it in A tier because I think it's unique and it's decently strong. I think it'll be better as a solo laner aspect because you can play to get low, pop your ultimate, then pop your 3, and then you're healing. I think it's going to be pretty bad in jungle, but I think that's the shift that you're going to get with it. Ra, the aspect of thermotherapy. Solar Blessing and Searing Pain only deal base damage with no scaling. In return, Solar Blessing can be placed on allied gods, attaching to them, and Searing Pain heals allies hit. Yeah, this one is 100% S tier. I think it'll be sick for support Ra, solo lane Ra. I think it'll make them both very, very strong. I think this character was already very strong in solo lane. I think this just makes him even better because you can just guarantee your ultimate being hit. You can also use it to just like heal an ally. I've already seen Seagull play a bunch of games with Raw solo with the aspect. If you guys are curious to know what it looks like, Seagull on YouTube has a couple videos about Raw. He's still got a couple in-houses on there of other characters if you're interested in some solo lane gameplay. Very, very cool to watch. I'm a big fan of it. S tier. Thanatos, aspect of reaping. Harvester of souls no longer heals Thanatos, but provides permanent max health. Additionally, soul reap heals bonus damage and heals Thanatos based on his max health. S tier. Don't care. I think it'll be pretty strong, but I think the best part about it is that it is very fun and very unique. I'll say it for everyone to hear me say it again, because I've said it a billion times, and I'm going to say it a billion times again. Stacking mechanics are very, very cool. It makes laning phase more interesting, and it makes it something more to play for. 100% awesome. I think it is going to be pretty strong. Not broken or anything. Pretty strong, but it's pretty strong, and it's so cool. And it can be played in solo lane or in jungle. I think it's going to be good for both. But either way, S tier, so sick. And lastly, the Morrigan aspect of mischief. Confusion no longer stealths you, but on refire, you swap positions with your clone. This is going to kind of be like Bastet Jump, where you jump and then you can jump back, except instead of initially having to jump, you just toss your 3 out to the side, and then you can teleport to it. And the best part about this is even if you hit the clone, you can still teleport to it. So like the enemy breaks the clone, hits it, it still is there, and you can teleport to it. So there's no like true counter. Like in a 1v1, if a Susanoo's diving you, you toss your 3 out to the side, he can't dive you as easily because he has to kind of choose. When you're like just going invis, Susanoo has these massive AoEs that he just knocks you up with or catches you with them. It's going to be a cool middle ground to depends on the comp, which one you want to go. I am a fan of it. I think it'll just be a tiny bit weak, and it doesn't like shift the character a ton because like her 1-2 ultimate is still the exact same, and her 3 is still a movement ability. So I'm on that part of it, but I'm still a fan overall.